For decades, the market for computer memory, we're talking about DRAM, has been an absolute graveyard for tech giants. It's a brutal boom and bust cycle that's probably destroyed more capital than almost any other sector out there. But now, the AI revolution is causing a tectonic shift. So we've got to ask, has this AI supercycle, which is really set to hit its stride in 2026, finally broken the curse? This quote just nails it. It perfectly captures the brutal history we need to understand, because to really get why today's AI-driven market is so different, you first have to appreciate just how punishing this industry has been for, well, almost everyone who's tried to compete in it. So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the oligopoly's genesis, how a massive global battlefield boiled down to just a 3-player game. Then we'll dig into its long history of burning cash. After that, we'll explore how AI creates the memory wall. This is the great disruption. Then we'll size up China's sovereign challenge to this new world order. And finally, we'll get to the big one. Has the cycle finally broken? So how in the world did a market that started with over 20 different companies, all fighting it out, consolidate into this tiny, incredibly powerful club?
I mean, just look at this timeline. This isn't just a history. It's a war of attrition that lasted 5 decades. It wasn't just about simple price wars. It was about the crushing complexity and the brutal economics of scale. See, every new generation of DRAM required bigger and bigger investments in these giant factories, or fabs. The 80s, Japan pushed out the US. Even Intel had to tap out. The 90s, Korea's chaebols just spent their way through downturns to grab market share. And the 2000s, that was just a bloodbath. By the time 2012 rolled around, only 3 were left standing.
And here is the result of that war. As of right now, just 3 companies, Samsung, SK Hynix, and Micron, control a staggering 95% of the entire global DRAM market. It is, without a doubt, one of the most concentrated oligopolies in the entire tech world. Okay, so you hear the word oligopoly and you think, cha-ching, a gold mine for investors, right? Well, history tells a very, very different story. -6%. Let that sink in. For over a decade before the market finally consolidated, that was the average operating profit for the top DRAM companies. They were systematically, year after year, losing money, even while they were dominating one of the most critical parts of the tech industry.
And this is the core of the problem. It's a paradox known as the Red Queen's race. It's basically an investment treadmill that's constantly speeding up. These companies have to spend billions and billions on R&D and new fabs just to stay relevant. The spending is so extreme that it creates this huge gap between the profit you see on paper and the actual economic profit that shareholders get. Even in the good years, they'd have to reinvest half their revenue just to keep up, leaving almost nothing for investors.
Okay, so that was the old world. But now, a new force has come along and completely upended that entire economic model. And that force, of course, is the insane demand for memory driven by artificial intelligence. The biggest problem in AI computing today is something called the memory wall. Now, the best way to think about it is this. Imagine an AI processor is a giant factory with 1,000 workers, all ready to go. But they're just standing around, waiting for a single delivery truck to bring them the materials they need to work on. That delivery truck, that's your memory. The processor is just too fast for it, and this gap has become the single biggest performance bottleneck in AI. So the industry's answer to this is a completely radical new design called high bandwidth memory, or HBM. Instead of a flat, single chip that's like a one-lane country road for data, HBM stacks multiple chips on top of each other, vertically. This creates a massive, multi-lane superhighway for data, with a bus width of over 1,024 bits. It's a huge leap from the 64-bit path of traditional memory, and it's designed specifically to tear down that memory wall. But, and this is probably the most crucial point of this entire conversation, building that data superhighway is incredibly inefficient. Just look at this die penalty. For every 1 unit of that precious silicon wafer you need to make standard DRAM, making the equivalent amount of HBM consumes 3 times as much. This one fact changes the entire economics of the memory market. And here's the big takeaway. That 3-to-1 die penalty means that every single time the big 3 decide to shift a silicon wafer to making high-margin HBM for AI, that's a wafer that is not being used for the regular memory in our PCs, our smartphones, our servers, our cars. To feed the AI boom, they are structurally starving the rest of the tech world. And that's creating a global shortage and sending prices for everything else through the roof. So when you have a massive supply crunch like this, it creates a once-in-a-generation opportunity for a new challenger to jump in, especially one that's backed by the full power of a nation-state. And right on cue, enter China's national champion, CXMT. As the big three pivot all of their most advanced capacity over to HBM, CXMT is rapidly scaling up to fill that vacuum in the standard memory market. I mean, look at these projections. Their global market share is expected to more than double in just 1 year. That's a direct consequence of the big three's strategic obsession with AI.
So this whole thing sets up a geopolitical chess match, and you can really see 3 ways it could play out. Scenario 1, China just takes over the commodity market, and the big three basically retreat into their high-end HBM fortress. Scenario 2, US export controls actually work, and China is permanently locked out of the high-end AI race. Or, Scenario 3, China gets a state-funded breakthrough anyway, and it triggers another one of those classic value-destroying price wars that nobody wins.
All of this leads us to the final multi-trillion-dollar question for the entire semiconductor industry. So let's get right to it. After all those decades of burning cash, has the structural shift from AI finally made this a sustainably profitable business for investors?
The bull case, the argument that this time it's different, is incredibly compelling. It goes like this. First, AI demand is structural, not cyclical like a new phone. Second, that HBM die penalty creates a forced supply discipline. Third, the tech moat to make this stuff is deeper than it's ever been. And maybe the best part, the big three have pricing power like never before. I mean, HBM capacity is reportedly sold out for all of 2026 already. So the consensus is building. The rules have changed.
But there's always a but, isn't there? Here's the variant perception. The idea that AI demand is secular, that's probably right. But the industry's pricing behavior has always been violently cyclical. So the trillion-dollar question is what happens if the AI gold rush just cools off a bit? It doesn't have to end, just cool. Right as all those brand new multi-billion-dollar fabs come online in 2027. The market seems to be underestimating this supply wave. So has the cycle been broken? The short answer is no. The game is still the same, but the AI supercycle has raised the stakes to a level we have never seen before.